Arguably the most famous and, in our opinions, the greatest wrestling announcer of all time, Mr. Jim Ross. JR, welcome to Top Rope Nation.
Thank you, sir. Good to be with you guys.
Absolutely. Super pumped about this. We've been anticipating this all week. We brought you on the program today to talk about your recently released book, Under the Black Hat. I got an advance copy of that, just finished it. It's an awesome read. It's the second book in a two-part biography series that you wrote. My Life in Wrestling was released about 2.5 years ago, covers the early part of your career. This book begins just prior to your return to announcing at WrestleMania 15. I wanted to ask you, what was the process for writing this book as far as, did you start writing it at the same time as the previous book? Did you take some time off in between writing them?
No, I took some time off. I was finishing the Slobberknocker, for the first part of the autobiography, when my wife got killed in March of 17. So we completed the first book. And then, there was just so much chronologically that I didn't cover in the Slobberknocker book, because I wanted to write it chronologically. So I thought, well, the story's untold, and we've got a lot of very compelling topics that we can discuss in this book if we strategize correctly. So this is an untold story. I felt like I owed it to my late wife to be able to tell our story, her story and mine, and the role she played in my career in WWE for sure. So this is an untold story. I wanted to finish it out, and I kind of call it the last public hug for my late wife, because she's as you read, Ryan, she's a very prominent part of this book. I even had a buddy of mine who I sent a book to, and he was on the road back before this virus stuff. He probably got the same kind of copy you got. He made, the advanced copy thing. But anyway, he said he got home and his wife was reading it, and she wouldn't give it to him because she wanted to finish it. And when she finished it, she said, "That's one of the nicest love stories I've ever read." And I never envisioned that I was writing a love story. But when I look back on it from others' perspective, I can see how that description could be easily made.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the book is very focused on relationships, like you said, with your wife. I think the love that you two had for each other just really jumps off the pages. It's kind of a theme throughout, and her support for you at different hard times throughout your career. And then also, your relationship with Vince McMahon is what really takes over, I think, for fans that have read this, kind of the behind the scenes, what was going on during different moments of your career.
Yeah, it's I think everybody expected me to write some sort of hatchet job to take the low road, as so many people do, to get quote unquote clicks, et cetera, et cetera. And I had no desire to write that. Vince and I had a very unique relationship for over a quarter of a century. And I was just either number one or number two for many of those years. And so I wanted to explain that, because I think it's been misunderstood a great deal. Just because people disagree philosophically doesn't mean they have to become mortal enemies. And we see that on social media a lot, where somebody makes an opinion, which everybody has a right to do, to express an opinion. And then others that don't agree with it take personal assaults that, that's stupid. How can you think that? Blah, blah, blah. So I just didn't want to write a hatchet job book, but it is the most unique story involving Vince that has ever been written, because I had unlike so many others, because of my role, not just because of JR, but because of my role there, I think that my relationship with him was unlike anybody else's, simply because I was in administration, I was the voice of the brand, I was the host of Monday Night Raw, pay-per-views, all these things. So there's a lot of great stuff to talk about, but people can understand Vince a little bit better, I think, by reading this book, if that's one of your goals.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, Jim, one of your roles, talent relations. You mentioned the book, Brock Lesnar being one of your all-time greatest signings. Maybe a couple other names. Who would you consider being proud of bringing to the WWE in addition to Brock? Who are some of your other favorite signings?
Well, I think you start with Dwayne Johnson. He's done pretty good in life. I think he's doing good. So many guys, John Cena, Dave Bautista, Randy Orton, Edge and Christian, Kurt Angle, a lot of cats, a lot of men and women, Trish Stratus. So I had the privilege of being able to facilitate an opportunity. Dusty Rhodes told me one time a long time ago, I was kind of angry about whatever it was, some egocentric thing probably. And he said, well, remember, if you turn your jersey in, you can't play on the team anymore. And I've always felt like it was important for me to stay in the game. And that's kind of one of the reasons I left WWE, is I wanted to stay in the game in a more prominent role. But I got, great stuff on my relationship with Stone Cold, and all talking thoroughly about WrestleMania 19, his last match, the Vince stuff we talked about, how we had to sell hiring Chris Jericho, the challenges of hiring Eddie Guerrero, Chris Benoit, Dean Malenko, and Perry Saturn. A lot of things that people will relate to. Of course, the Monday Night Wars, the XFL, the company going public, another couple of bouts of Bell's palsy for me, being replaced a couple of times. It's just part of the journey, man. It's just part of the journey. And looking at today's world we live in, my issues, or I'll put it in italics, my quote-unquote issues seem so pale by comparison to what we're all living through today, which is so much more important than us that. But I think my book is a great relief. The timing of this virus is not good for any of us. I did not expect the bookstores to be closed when my book came out. That was not what we planned. Yeah. But the good news is that because we're living in this day and age, you can get my book delivered to your house, and all you got to do is open your front door and pick it up, because we can deliver it to you in a variety of ways. So for that, I'm thankful. But the book's doing great. It was the #1 selling sports biography on Amazon in our category after the third day. So it's selling. It's doing well. And on my little website at jrsbbq.com, you can get not only our barbecue sauces and all the condiments, but a signed copy, personalized autograph to you that if you live in the lower 48, we will pay the freight on. So jrsbbq.com, of course, Amazon, Walmart.com, all these things are ways to get the book. Target.com's got it. That's my phone ringing, but I don't ever answer it because it's my home line. We all know who calls your home line.
Yes.
The listeners.
Yeah.
And they say if you answer the phone, they know it's a hot number. It's a real number. So we'll get through. They'll stop here in a second, and we'll just continue to move on. But I apologize for that. But that's
no problem.
That's the deal.
No problem at all. Yeah, like you mentioned, I read mine on my Kindle. You guys can jump on Amazon, get it delivered in minutes, or take Jer up on that offer for the autographed copy, which is a heck of a deal. But it is a real page turner. It took me just a couple days to read this book. It's over 300 pages, and it's a fast read. It's I would say personally, this one ranks up there right alongside the Bret Hart, the Chris Jericho, the Mick Foley books. This is an excellent biography that you wrote, Jim. And one of the parts that I found really interesting was something that wrestling fans will often debate. We've talked about it in our program before, and that was that move for Steve Austin to turn heel at WrestleMania 17. And you recount in the book this backstage conversation you had with Steve, kind of trying to talk him out of it. But his mind was set. He wanted to try the heel run. He thought he was running out of steam. You didn't think so. Looking back now, I think obviously most people would say it was probably a mistake. Is there any way at all, in your opinion, that Austin's heel turn could have worked out better? And do you see that moment as kind of the end of the Attitude Era?
Interesting question. I don't know that Steve turning heel would ever have worked at that point in time, because he was over so dominantly. And I told him, I think I wrote in the book, maybe, it'd be like John Ford, the great director, casting John Wayne to be a Nazi. It would not have worked. It would not even been tried. And for us to think that we could turn him heel thanks to his relationship with Mr. McMahon, we got to remember where it happened. It happened at Austin's home state. It happened in Houston and at WrestleMania 17. So it was the audience. He could do no wrong. Steve could do no wrong. And if you listen, you go back and watch that on the WWE Network or wherever, you'll see that the ovation that Austin got coming out was nothing short of extraordinary.
Yeah.
So I just never heard. I just don't think it would have ever worked because he was that great of a babyface. Stone Cold Steve Austin was a folk hero. He was a hero to many working blue-collar people. I just never saw it working very well. I don't know if it was the end of the Attitude Era or not, but it was certainly on the backside of it, one would think, because Austin was our leader. He was the leading. He was pulling the wagon. And then, of course, we were lucky enough to recruit Rock, as I said. And then Rock was there. He was 1A. So when Steve got hurt, we were very, very fortunate in WWE that we had signed Dwayne. And then Dwayne was ready, prepared, and able to take over the Austin role. So I don't know the answer to that, Ryan. I think maybe it was toward that point in time, but to say conclusively it was the end of the Attitude Era, I don't know that I can say that, but it damn sure was close.
Jim, earlier you mentioned, the up and down relationship with Vince McMahon being covered in depth in the book, the unique way you look at it. With you now working for the competition, AEW, what is the status of your relationship with Vince McMahon now, and when did you last speak to him?
Well, we talked we talk every holidays. This busy guy, and I'm a busy man as well. So just sitting and having a casual chat, quite frankly, in our worlds, Vince and mine, it's not really realistic. But we're nonetheless, we text. I congratulated him on how successful that they made WrestleMania, and dealt a very bad hand. So I'd say our relationship is casually friendly at best. At worst, if I needed something, I know that I could call Vince and request, discuss, and be, I think, accommodated. And he knows I'm the same way. That doesn't mean I'm going to work with him. I got a great job, and I just started my second year of a 3-year contract about a week ago here with AEW. So I made the right move, but I don't have any animosity toward Vince. He helped Jan and I make a great living, of which we've solidified our future. So I'm not gonna be disrespectful in that respect. It's just a fact. I tell guys this, it's a lot of sports radio guys. It basically comes down to something like this. I wanted to run the wishbone. The boss, the head coach, wanted to run the spread offense. So we ran the spread offense. And sometimes my reaction to not having my way, not getting my idea through, whatever it may be, I didn't handle well. That's my fault. That's on me. Didn't handle the stress well. I reacted negatively to a lot of things. So I was a handful to manage at times, but I never looked up. I never had a chance to stop and smell the roses, so to speak. But that's not Vince's fault. That's me being overly possessive and a little bit anal and wanting to have a game plan and to be able to utilize it unencumbered. So, but Vince and I are fine. I think the world of him in that regard. How can you be a human being and get pissed off over a wrestling angle or a storyline that you pitched that didn't get accepted or a talent that you pitched that didn't quite make it in lieu of all the other great things that I experienced there? So I don't know. Since Jan got killed, I've just tried to eliminate guys, a lot of negativity. It's like the guys ask, who's the worst talent you ever signed? What's the worst match you ever saw? Who's the worst person you ever dealt with? That's where we're at right here. What's the worst? And I don't even care to go there. I say all the time, I don't have room in my carry-on anymore for negativity. I'm 68 years old. I'm blessed in life. I'm alive. I'm healthy. Thank God. My family's healthy. They haven't been subjected to this virus. So I got too much to be thankful for, fellas, to bitch about a personality conflict or a philosophical difference.
Yeah. Certainly your move to All Elite Wrestling was kind of rejuvenating for your career as far as, and for the company, AEW just starting up, to have you come on board, one of the most experienced, successful former front office wrestling people, let alone your background as an announcer and lending your hand in that regard. How would you compare, in general, the working environments of WWE versus what you've experienced in AEW so far? How are they similar? How are they different?
Well, they're similar in the fact that they both promote the same genre of pro wrestling. At least we call it pro wrestling in AEW. It's still sports entertainment in Vince's world, which is fine. There's different brand, different technique. But WWE is so much bigger, and it's so much more corporate. A lot of layers. And in AEW, we don't have any writers. We have a small crew. To get access to the decision maker, Tony Khan, is a matter of just walking up to him and start talking. So it's more casual. It's a little bit more laid back. It's more personable, I think. And, of course, Tony, being in his mid-30s, being a lifelong fan, over 30 years, he's been a fan all his life. Mm-hmm. When I first met him a few years ago in Long Beach, and we were doing 2 days of New Japan Wrestling on Access TV, that's where I met Tony. First time, and I knew that he was a little bit extraordinary, almost like, wow, this guy is frighteningly brilliant, because he was remembering things I said on TV in Mid-South or UWF. I'm not sure he was even born then, but he's just that big a fan. He's that big a fan, and I love that. So he still has great passion for the product. He likes to engage all talents in conversation. He listens to everybody's ideas. He encourages individuality. And I don't know that that's always the case with all the layers in WWE. No, good Lord, they're the big dog in the yard. They're making the most money. That's great. And if WWE does well, fellas, that usually trickles down to other companies doing well, too. So it's just more casual. It's more relaxed. It's very non-political, in my view. Now, some talents in AEW may say differently. That's their opinion. But for me, what I've observed, and I've been in a lot of locker rooms, it's probably the most non-political environment in pro wrestling that I've ever worked in.
Yeah, I cover wrestling for CBS over at comicbook.com, and one of the big things I've noticed is just how open AEW is with the media. I had a chance to go to AEW Revolution in Chicago right before all this madness started with the coronavirus, and took part in the press scrum afterwards. And like you mentioned, Tony is just a fascinating guy to talk to, and he was just willing and able to take as many questions as the media had for him that night. And that's just a big difference, I think, between WWE and AEW is just how you guys are so open with the media. And I think the press scrum thing that you guys do after the pay-per-views is a really cool touch, and I've appreciated that a lot.
Well, other mainstream entities, whether it be mainstream sports, entertainment in general, they have press conferences and junkets, things of that nature, to promote their product. And I think Tony's just picking up where that left off. In order, he and his dad own the Jacksonville Jaguars, as many know. They're used to this media thing. But Tony has respect for the wrestling media by and large. I mean, there's a lot of really smart guys and gals out there that are covering wrestling that actually have great product knowledge. And that's a big change from years ago, because years ago, the old school guys didn't want to admit that, the business was what it was. It was entertainment, and that it wasn't, it's almost insulting how they wanted to treat the media, the dirt sheets and this and that and the other. The dirt sheets give results that have already happened in opinion. I got no issue with anybody giving an opinion. And what I found as far as the wrestling media is concerned in today's generation of that is that they're more knowledgeable. They have more information flow, and we can all thank social media for that, because that's the deal. There's more data floating around out there where people can attach to, and become a more of a student of the game. So Tony has respect for the media, the wrestling media, including obviously we're talking about here, and I find that very refreshing, quite frankly.
Well, Jim, we wouldn't want to ask you any questions about the worst, but it just so happens that we have one about the best. One of the ongoing themes we have on our podcast is Mount Rushmore lists. Pick 4 favorites of any topic. Who would make your Mount Rushmore of greatest wrestling announcers?
Oh, my goodness. Gordon Soley, Bob Caudle, Lance Russell, Gorilla Monsoon would be 4 off the top of my head that I would put on there. If you included color guys, color commentators, that would certainly include Bobby Heenan, who may be the best all-around performer I've ever worked with, as far as being an outstanding wrestler, a great heel, a manager, a host, a color guy. He excelled in everything he did, and nobody in that era was better, or that area was better than Bobby, in my view. So Bobby Heenan would be on that list. Paul Heyman would be one. Jerry Lawler would be one. I'm trying to think who else I would. Lawler, Heyman, Cornette, great color guy. So there's a lot of them, but those 4 guys on the when you ask the announcers, I just assume it was like my role as a play-by-play guy. So those 4 I mentioned, I think, would be there quite easily. But it's a very subjective list, like everything else, but those are my favorites.
Could you have imagined working with Tony Schiavone again? What is it now? 30 years later?
I love it. Tony Khan and I had many conversations about who I was going to work with. And, as time went on, I saw Tony was available. Tony had been rejuvenated with Conrad Thompson's family of podcasts, and he got back into the mode. And so he wanted to change. He wanted to get his toe back in the water. So Tony Schiavone and I had ongoing conversations and of his interest. So I really pushed hard for him to get hired because he could help us. Again, you got to wear more than one hat in this company to be successful in our area. And Tony can edit. He can produce. He can be a studio host. He can be an interviewer. He can do play-by-play. He can do color. And he was also based in Atlanta, where a lot of activity ensues for AEW, because so many people live there in that area, including Cody. So I pushed hard for it, and it wasn't a hard sell. And then I think Tony Khan flew Schiavone down to Jacksonville from Atlanta. They spent the day together, or maybe had dinner or something like that. They had a great conversation, and we got our man, so to speak. So I love working with Tony. Tony's one of the most reliable, level-headed, intelligent guys I've ever worked with. I love working with him. I'm in Excalibur. Excalibur is a star of the future, no doubt about that. I had reservations about working with a masked color guy. I didn't understand why he was mad, but nonetheless, it didn't matter. It didn't matter what I thought, because the guy does a hell of a good job. And he's only going to get better. He's only going to get better, quite frankly. But Schiavone was a big get for us. And right now, with me not flying, Excalibur not flying due to the virus, Tony has been loaded up with work. His wagon is full. So I'm really happy that we have Tony, and I think he's happy he has us.
Jim, we don't want to take up too much of your time. I got one more question for you, and this one we just added it to our agenda like a half hour ago because there was some breaking news this morning, and I just have to ask you about it. You probably already heard the Revival have been released by WWE, something people have kind of been expecting, but it was made official today. Obviously, they're one of the best tag teams in the business. They've had kind of an ongoing feud over social media with the Young Bucks. Would be a huge asset for AEW. Can you say anything about if AEW will move to sign them, and what kind of a prospective future do you see for them with AEW if they were to sign?
Well, if a big if. Everything's a big if, because I have no idea what the Revival's goals are. I think they would fit into our team very, very well. We're trying to be a little bit more athletically oriented, more fundamentally sound in our storytelling, and the Revival team certainly fits that bill. They are one of the best tag teams in the world, period, no matter where it is. So I think they would do great in our company. Whether that happens or not remains to be seen. There'll be gross speculation as a done deal, all that good stuff. But Tony Khan handles that, and I'm not in that talent relations role any longer, thank goodness. I'm the senior advisor. Let me tell you what that means. My job description is this. I take credit for all the good ideas and disavow any knowledge of the ones that suck. That's a Tony. I can't imagine, knowing Tony as I do, Tony Khan as I do, and the fan that he is, and his ability to spot great things, that he wouldn't be interested. Why would anybody not be interested in Revival is my question. So I'm thinking that, there's a possibility they come to work for us. I think, I'd love that. I'd love to call their matches. I've watched a lot of their work. They're a throwback team. They're fun. And that doesn't mean they wear black boots and they have to, it's just the old school stuff. They are fundamentally sound. They're old school oriented in the process of telling a story. And I think that's really important. They don't leave things out. They don't take shortcuts. And they have the ability with their skill set to work with any team out there and make that team and that match better. And we've got some really good teams evolving in AEW, of course, led by the Young Bucks, who may be the best tag team in the world. If they're not, they're certainly in the conversation. But one could certainly, as a broadcaster and as a fan, that's all I'm saying, because I don't have any inside information on this deal. I just read about it a little before we started recording, that these guys are released. They may become available sooner than later. I don't know how long their no compete is. That'll be a big point. Everybody will have a theory on that deal. So usually they're 90 days, but WWE may have rescinded that with these guys. They may have made an exception to let them go do their thing. So anyway, I hope that they consider AEW, and I sure as hell like to call some of their matches. They remind me a lot of the old Midnight Express. They just don't have a Jim Cornette in their corner right now. So, but boy, these guys are good. They're really good, and they're young. They're athletic. They're durable. They seem to be good locker room guys. They're wrestling guys. They're not sports entertainment guys. That was never a great fit, but they're wrestling guys, and they need to be in a wrestling company. For my money, that's AEW.
Yeah, absolutely. And your tag division down there is really, I think, set you guys apart too. So like you mentioned, Jim, so many great teams there and a lot of great prospective matches. Should it go down, we appreciate you coming on this podcast with us this morning so much, Jim. It's been a pleasure talking to you. Like I said at the top, a legend in the business. The book is well worth the read, guys. Check it out. And it's available pretty much wherever books are found online. Check out JR's website for the deal on the autograph copy. And Jim, hopefully we will talk to you again in the future. Thank you so much.
I appreciate you guys very much. And another thing I'll just mention real quickly, I read the audio book, and it was the hardest assignment I ever did as a talent, shall we say, use that term loosely with me, because I told somebody, I said I should call my friend Toby Keith and have him write a country song about this. I had so many tears in my eyes reading the latter part of that book, Under the Black Hat, that I couldn't read. And it took me about twice as many days to get through this read. And now it's coming back to be a really successful thing. The audiobook is selling like crazy. And the stories I tell, some of my voices, inflections are different. It's not a standard read, the text. It is performing the text. And so I think don't overlook that one, because people can get those, boom, like you said earlier about the ebook. You can get it in a few seconds. It's on your devices. So I don't overlook the audio book because I think it gives a different perspective than if you read it or your partner reads it or whatever, or me reading it. It's better to be, you hear the actual thing, and I add a little showmanship to it when it's called for, but I really have had a lot of fun doing that. And I'm so grateful that people are buying the book. It's a great testament to Jan, and I'm happy that we did it. I'm glad we got to tell her story as well. That was important to me, to write a true book. And I talk about my own issues. I was never perfect. I'm still not perfect, but I really have been blessed to be a wrestling fan since I first earned my first check in wrestling, which is 1974. So it's been a great love affair with the business fellas. Sometimes I didn't think the business loved me as much as I wanted, but I can also look myself in the mirror and say, well, JR, your ego may be a little bit inflated. Chill out. So let it go.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm really blessed. I'm living my best life. I hope you guys are too, and staying safe. But we've got to get over this virus. To me, this is the biggest thing, the biggest challenge in my 68 years of living. It's what we're doing right now. And I'm not so sure everybody's taking it personally as they should. Personally, seriously. Mm-hmm. Because now we're seeing everybody die. All these deaths, man. If that doesn't open your eyes, I don't know what will. So in any event, I appreciate you guys having me on, and I'm glad you enjoyed it under the black hat.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Jim.
Like you said, Jim, the fans always had your back throughout the career, and I think the fans will enjoy this read, and we appreciate it so much.
You bet, buddy. My pleasure. Thanks.
So there it was, guys. Interview, our sit-down with good old JR, Jim Ross. Kyle, what'd you think of that interview?
Fantastic interview, if I do say so myself.
It was.
I think you were exemplary in your questions.
Oh, thank you. I
You
appreciate
that. A real pro.
Learning as I go, man.